Welcome to the Ljubljana podcast, the place to come for travel and food tips, cultural highlights, insider stories, and chats with locals. It's everything you need to know about Slovenia's beloved capital city. I'm your host, Slovenia's ambassador of tourism, Noah Charney. Let's fire it up. Today's episode is a special one because we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, Slovenian food. When people first think of Slovenia, they tend to picture Lake Bled, the Julian Alps, Ljubljana's riverside cafes, maybe a glass of wine somewhere in Brda. But if you want to understand this country properly, you really have to sit down at the table, preferably someone else's table, preferably a grandmother's table. And ideally when she has decided that you look dangerously underfed and must be rescued immediately. One of the things I've written about before is that Slovenia is a country that could be summed up in this phrase: we don't know how good we have it. And this is especially true when it comes to food. I say this as an American who grew up in a family of food lovers, but also in a country where convenience often wins. We froze leftovers, ordered far too many pizzas, and considered it practically an emergency if we didn't have Chinese food in the freezer. So what Slovenia taught me was a different rhythm. Here, food is still tied to season, family, region, landscape, and a certain stubborn insistence that lunch should taste like somebody cared. That does not mean Slovenian food is fancy. Some of the best things here are wonderfully unfancy. Potica, the rolled holiday cake that every Slovenian seems to believe their grandmother makes better than everyone else's grandmother. Prekmurska gibenica, the glorious layered cake from Prekmurje that is less a dessert and more an architectural event. Kranjska klobasa, the Carniolan sausage, which is proof that sometimes the simplest things are the things most worth protecting. Then there are enolončnice, the one-pot stews, like ricet, which is based in barley, jota with sauerkraut, and obara, which is a veal stew. These are the dishes for cold days, mountain huts, long walks, family kitchens, and second helpings. Add to that Bled cream cake, which visitors to Lake Bled are legally, morally, and probably socially required to try. And then there are odsvirki, cracklings, which I once called pork popcorn, a name that, to my delight and mild alarm, seems to have caught on. My own Slovenian food education has involved a lot of eating, a little cooking, and a certain amount of cultural humility. I once found myself at a serious wine tasting in Brda, in the grand Renaissance setting of Villa Vipoje, surrounded by international wine experts who knew exactly what they were doing. I, meanwhile, was facing a profound moral and practical dilemma. Should I spit out or swallow the wine? There were 15 glasses of rebula, an indigenous varietal, to taste, and I quickly realized that the art of elegant spitting had somehow passed me by. I also had to drive home later, so I compromised. I sipped carefully, swallowed selectively, and tried not to fall over. Somewhere between the brilliant wines, the intimidating tasting notes, and my insufficient breakfast, I learned that Slovenian food and wine culture can be both deeply sophisticated and deeply funny. On another adventure, while working with Janez Bratovž, the famous chef, on a cookbook about Slovenian cuisine, I traveled around the country visiting producers whose ingredients tell the story of Slovenia, from the Alps to the Adriatic. That project, called Slovenian Cuisine, gave me one of my favorite ideas. I wanted not only to teach Slovenians a few American recipes, but to learn how to make Slovenian classics myself, especially holiday dishes like potica or stuffed pork ribs, filena rebrca. Of course, there is one obstacle. Everyone knows that the best versions are not made by chefs, however brilliant they may be, they're made by grandmothers. Nobody really wants a modernist, deconstructed potica on Christmas Eve. What we want is the old-fashioned kind, full of butter, sugar, patience, and the secret ingredient that no one can quite write down, love, or possibly muscle memory of having made hundreds of poticas. And that brings me to today's guests, both of whom are doing something beautiful and important. They're helping Slovenian food travel. Michelle Pusic Ryall is a Canadian living in Toronto, born into a Slovenian family there, and the creator of the hugely popular Slovenska Kuhinja, the Slovenian Kitchen by Michelle, on Instagram and YouTube and beyond. You can also visit sloveniankitchen.com to learn more. Michelle is part of a vibrant Slovenian community in the Greater Toronto area, where traditional recipes are not museum pieces. They're living things passed down, cooked again, filmed, shared, explained, and handed to new generations who may live an ocean away from Slovenia, but still know the smell of potica baking. My second guest is Anita Sumer, known around the world through her cookbooks and online presence as Sourdough Mania. You can find her at sourdoughmania.com and on social media. Anita has achieved international renown for her work with droži, or sourdough starter. In her hands, bread is not just bread. It is craft and patience, fermentation, family history, and a little bit of magic. She has helped people all over the world fall in love with sourdough, while carrying a very Slovenian sense of care and tradition into kitchens far beyond Slovenia. What Michelle and Anita share is a gift for making heritage edible. They remind us that cuisine does not stay alive because someone writes it down once and puts it in an archive. It stays alive because someone cooks it, someone teaches it, someone burns it for the first time, improves it the second time, and serves it proudly the third. Someone films the recipe for Instagram. Someone feeds a child who rolls their eyes now but will one day crave exactly that taste when they're far from home. So today we'll talk about Slovenian food across borders, recipes, memory, sourdough, grandmothers, migration, community, and why the most meaningful dishes are often the ones that refuse to be hurried. Welcome to this special episode of the Ljubljana podcast. Grab a coffee, cut yourself a slice of potica if you have one handy, or go bake one, and join us in the kitchen. I'm often asked where I recommend staying in Ljubljana. My answer is easy: Hotel Mrak. Hotel Mrak is my home away from home in Slovenia's capital. It's a family-run, elegant boutique hotel with a perfect location, right in the pedestrian-friendly heart of the city. You can easily walk anywhere from Hotel Mrak. Like me, it's got an artsy vibe, and it also has an epically good breakfast that is worth a journey. Take a look for yourself at hotelmrak.si. That's hotelmrak.si. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with the Ljubljana podcast. So you're at home now in Toronto, is that right?
That is right.
And tell me a little bit about your Slovenian origins.
So I'm very fortunate to have been born into a family where my mom was born in Slovenia, Prekmurje, and my dad was born in Metlika, Bela Krajina. And my mom moved here to Canada when she was 18. My dad came when he was 6.
Wow. So there are two Slovenes who met in Canada without having had any connection prior to emigrating?
Yes, that's right.
Is there a kind of cutesy love story about how they met?
There is. So my dad is actually part of, him and my uncle had started a band called Veseli Vandrovčki. And they did a lot of touring. They were a very, very, very popular band back in the day. So if you were at any Veselica in probably North America, or if you were getting married, my dad's band was the band that you were going to call to play for your anything that you were being organized with a Slovenian community or a wedding. So my mom, naturally, at the Brownsline Hall that they were members of at the Catholic Church, my dad was playing at a Veselica, and my mom was there, and she looked on stage, saw my dad's piercing blue eyes and blonde hair, and yeah, and that was it. She was captivated and called her parents and said, "I'm not coming back."
And the rest was history. What a great story. So when you grew up, what were some of the Slovenian dishes that you associate with childhood eating?
Oh my gosh. My mom is an amazing cook, and for me, she is the queen of the kitchen. So what do I love? There's so many things. I don't even know where to begin. So I love krvavice. I love sarma. Štrukli v juhi is probably one of my favorite soups.
Let's actually lay this out for people because some of our audience, believe it or not, won't have tried all of these things. So krvavica is blood sausage, which is much more delicious than it sounds.
Yes, yes.
And then sarma, it's kind of complicated to describe, but do you want to try to describe it?
So it is fermented cabbage It's a meat and rice mixture that gets rolled inside the cabbage. And then my mom actually cooks it in like a broth as opposed to cooking it in the oven. So it's almost like a soupy mixture with the cabbage rolls inside it. It's so good.
And štrukli v juhi, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting too. How would you describe that? I never know how to describe štrukli to people. It's a little bit tricky because translation, sometimes it's like dough rolls or dumplings, but it doesn't look like what most people think of when they think of dumpling because they're thinking like of an Asian sort of situation.
Right. So yeah, it's like a stretched, I guess it would be similar to like a dough that you would use for like strudel, like a stretched dough. And then it's got the cheese, you roll it up. My mom puts it whole. So she kind of like, it's like a long snake almost. And she puts it inside the pot with the broth. And that is, have you ever had it?
I've never had it in soup. So one of the things with štrukli is you can take it in different directions. It usually has a curd cheese called skuta in it. And I'm curious what you use in Toronto. Can you get something like that?
We do. We have like it's called like a farmer's cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, it's harder to find.
Because sometimes it's translated as cottage cheese, but in North America, cottage cheese is a very different thing with giant curds and much more tangy. So a farmer's cheese, okay. What I'm curious about is whether Slovenian North American foods differ from the traditional Slovenian versions the way, for example, Italian American foods like spaghetti and meatballs is the union of two dishes that never met in person back in Italy. You have the meatballs and you have the spaghetti. So are there any of these that you associate with North American Slovenian foods that aren't the same back home?
I guess our issues is in Slovenia, you guys are doing a lot farm to table. We try to do the same thing here. We find our butchers, that we can work with when we make, let's say, krvavice, kranjska klobasa, that kind of stuff. But no, I feel like we do a really, really good job.
That's great. That's authentic and keeping the home fires burning, as it were. Do you remember a first dish that you made with your mother or that she taught you that was sort of formative in your enjoyment of not only eating, but cooking?
It would probably be apple strudel.
Yeah. Everybody likes strudel. There's not a person on the planet who doesn't like strudel.
Right? That one's really hard. It's hard to perfect. And I mean, even potica, like if I didn't have her to kind of walk me through that, I mean, there's so many tricks and tips that you need to know when you make a perfect potica, a perfect strudel, right? If I didn't have her to guide me, show my followers how to do it, there's been so much success being able to like videotape all of this as well.
That's really valuable too, because it's much easier to show somebody than to explain it. This is where steps in a cookbook that are written out are one thing, but if you actually see someone doing it, it's much easier. But potica is tricky to make. You need a lot of time and a lot of sort of grandmotherly love, and there aren't shortcuts.
And patience.
Yeah. How did you get started with what is a very successful online venture of making videos about Slovenian cooking?
So this entire journey started back on April 3rd, 2020. I started a Facebook group called Slovenska Kuhinja. Let's share recipes, culture, and tradition. Literally overnight, I had thousands of people joining this group. It was incredible. The people, the community, it's like a family. I call it the SK family. And slowly I just started, we were all at home, 2020. Things were uncertain. So it was such a beautiful place to kind of get together. We were sharing recipes. People were taking pictures of things that they had on the walls from Slovenia, like little trinkets and, chincheria.
Mm-hmm, sure.
But it was so beautiful to be able to connect in that way from all corners of the world. So then as I was sharing some recipes, people were like, oh my gosh, you're like, the Slovenian Martha Stewart. You need to start sharing these recipes so we can see like the recipes we can find, but they're only in Slovenian. A lot of the followers that I have don't speak Slovenian. So I speak, read, and write.
Oh, good for you.
I went to Slovenska Škola for 9 years. So I was able to translate a lot of these recipes. And it's just been so much fun. It's been so great being able to share these recipes, connect with people. I've had, some ladies that have connected with me and said, oh, this was my first Easter without my mother. I was able to make a meal And I felt like she was with me. I mean, some of the messages that I get are just, I sit there crying.
That's very moving. Wow.
It is so beautiful. Really, it is. So I wake up with a smile and I go to bed with a smile.
That is so cool. So you're doing good and doing well at it, both of those things. At what point did it seem to you that this was really taking off? I think a lot of people who make online content and put it out there, it's like when you're planting a new garden. There's a lot of stuff happening under the ground before you see any fruits on the surface, and you have to sort of push your way through it. At what point did it feel like this is gaining traction and really becoming a thing?
I feel so fortunate. I almost feel like it was kind of like right away. It kind of just hit and it just kept going and it hasn't really stopped. Some days I feel like my head is spinning because it's just like, okay, I've got a blog. I work by myself. I have a blog. I have a website. I have a little online shop. I work with suppliers in Slovenia. I'm bringing items in so I can ship out. I've got my YouTube channel, right? So it's just, I'm wearing 80 hats most days. Some days I feel like burnout. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel really fortunate that it's kind of just taken off right from the beginning.
That's really lucky indeed. So what are the various platforms that people can find you on? And do they have a quick and easy website address that people can type in while they're listening to us? Although I'll put the links in the show notes.
Yes. So it can be found at www.sloveniankitchen.com, or they can even find me at Slovenska Kuhinja.com.
Okay. And also on YouTube, do they search for the same thing?
So YouTube, it's Slovenian Kitchen by Michelle. And Instagram, it's also Slovenian Kitchen by Michelle.
Is there a physical cookbook in the works?
I am actually currently working on one. I am a bit of a perfectionist, so that's going to be a little bit of work just because I want to make sure that it's perfect if it's going to be my first one coming out. But I started working on it last year.
That's excellent. So is it going to be a cookbook with lots of pictures, or can you give us a little preview as to the format?
I'm a visual person, so I definitely want to make sure that it's going to be heavy on pictures, and it'll probably be some storytelling just because I feel like that's sort of the direction that I do share most of my content. It's very history, story-based.
It's going to be great. Do you already have a date for publication or a pre-order link, or is that still to be determined?
That is still to be determined.
Okay. Well, I have a feeling you're going to get a lot of pre-orders because you have a lot of very enthusiastic fans. Should we expect very traditional recipes, or are these with a Michelle and Michelle's mom twist to them?
I think there will be a lot of traditional recipes, but I like to go against the grain sometimes. So yeah, there might be a little bit of Michelle and Mama Teresa twists in there as well.
Is there an active Slovenian cultural community in Toronto? I know there are a lot of ethnic Slovenes there, but what's it like if you're one of them? Where's the community based?
So we do actually have quite a few. I'm part of Maria Brezmadejna. It is a church organization where I did that's where I had my Slovenska šola. I did my baptism, communion. I got married there. My parents got married there.
Oh, that's definitely home base. Okay.
It's a home base for sure. That's where I tend to. There is another location in Hamilton. I'm part of Slovenski Park, which is a place where a lot of our ancestors, when they came here from Slovenia, it's a non-for-profit organization, lots of trailers. We do like veselice, picnics. When Slovenian bands come, they play there. We have Pachenka Fest. We have baseball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, bocce tournaments. It is such a great community where we all kind of come together, and it really feels like, Slovenia once we walk through those doors. We serve Slovenian dishes. The ladies get together and some men get together and we work in the kitchen together. And then our farma is known for pachenka. So people from all over will come to eat our pachenka.
Sounds amazing. And when you go to Slovenia, where do you like to visit? And is there any special dish that you like to eat when you're in the country that you can't wait to try?
So my home base is Prekmurje. I still have my mom's side of the family is all still there. So I go to my mom's birth house and I stay with my stric Tone. I have my uncle stric Nace and my cousin Robi there as well. So that's definitely my home base. And when I arrive, the first thing I do is I get into my car and I stop in Trojane and I pick up some donuts.
That's awesome. That's everybody's pit stop. That's
yeah,
great.
it really is. And my uncle laughs because he's like, oh my gosh, who's going to eat all these donuts? I'm like, we are.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. One of the things that I like from North American food traditions is that you'll have restaurants that specialize in one thing. And they've got other stuff, but almost everybody's going there for the one thing. And a lot of the restaurants here in Slovenia, if you ask the waiter, what's good here, what's your special, they'll say, oh, everything's good, which is not really helpful. And I like if there's a destination thing to try that you must drive very far to go to. And so I love the concept of Trojane Krofe with the giant donuts. And if any of the listeners are unfamiliar, how would you describe Trojane and their donuts to someone who hasn't tried it but wants to?
Oh my gosh, they are just very large, fluffy, and I usually go back to the back end of the restaurant. I sit down by myself in the little table and I have the view and I take my first bite. Maybe I'll shed a tear because it just feels like a bite of home.
Oh man, they should have you as the ambassador of donuts there. It's something definitely that anyone who comes to Slovenia and rents a car and is driving between, let's say, Ljubljana and Celje or Maribor should stop there. It used to be right off of the highway, and it used to be a very obvious place that everyone would stop. Now it's a little bit off of the highway, so you have to get off an exit and drive about 2 minutes. But the donut style in Slovenia is like the Austrian and German Krapfen. So it's a filled donut as opposed to the North American ring donut.
Exactly, yes.
In Slovenia, not until not long ago, you couldn't get those. Now you can find them anywhere. I filmed a TV program where another American guy and I were teaching Slovenes how to make American food. And we brought a Slovenian grandmother on to teach us how to make donuts the Slovenian way. And we made donuts the American way. And then we made a Luther Vandross burger with her, which I'm not sure if you've heard, but that's a donut instead of a burger bun. And you have like a bacon cheeseburger and it's got like 3 million calories in one meal. But it was fun to do. So I'm all about these food adventures, and it would be great to have you to do some event in Slovenia next time you come over. Or maybe we can set it up that you're going to get invited over just to do an event like this. But it's so appreciated that you continue Slovenian traditions abroad. It's wonderful to hear that there's such a lively social community that culturally associates itself with Slovenia in Toronto. And you're doing a great thing by introducing people who have not come across Slovenian cuisine, but also providing this point of nostalgia for people who are familiar with it and are sending you these lovely messages about how you really move them. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much.
Michelle will remain in touch and maybe host you in person. Maybe we can make a video together once if you're in Slovenia live. But in the meantime, all of our listeners should follow Michelle. Whenever it's ready, pre-order the cookbook and keep track of all of her adventures in Slovenian cooking.
Thank you so much, Noah. It was really a great pleasure speaking with you today, and I look forward to when we can meet in person.
Thank you so much.
What are you doing this Friday? Because if you're anywhere near Ljubljana, there's only one right answer. Odprta kuhna, open kitchen. Every Friday from late morning until late in the evening, Pogačar Square transforms into the tastiest place in town. Over 20,000 food lovers gather to sample sizzling street food from Slovenia's best chefs, sip craft cocktails and local wines, and dance their way into the weekend under the open sky. From Korean barbecue to Balkan classics, vegan delights to wood-fired pizza, it's a global street food party Slovenian style. It's been featured in The Guardian and beyond as a unique food fest where social life meets eats. Come hungry, come curious, and bring your friends. Odprta kuhna, Fridays June through October at Pogačarjev Trg, Pogačar Square, where Ljubljana goes to eat, drink, and celebrate.
Anita, thank you so much for joining me on the Ljubljana podcast. Now, I've been a fan of yours for many years. I have some of your books. I've eaten your breads. But for those who are not yet fortunate enough to have tried out your workshops, breads, books, and whatnot, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into being a specialist of sourdough baking?
Well, thank you, Nora, also for the invitation, for all the kind words you already said about me. So the best things start out of love, they say, right? And the same happened to me. By profession, I'm an English teacher, translator, but by other passions, love brought me into sourdough. And that was 14 years ago when my late husband had his gallbladder removed and he wasn't able to eat yeasted bread. So I started searching for other ways to make delicious, nutritious, crusty bread without commercial yeast. Stumbled upon sourdough, made my first starter, did not succeed. My second one survived. And the rest, I don't know. Should I say it's history?
Now, your original sourdough from 14 years ago, is it still with us? Or have you changed sourdough starters so there's none of the original still surviving in place?
Well, of course, my starter, I have two starters because I bake with gluten flours and gluten-free flours. So the first starter that I made is called Rudel. It's made with wheat flour. And he's still with me. Of course, he has 14 years, so he's a teenager now. The second one is gluten-free, and her name, because I have a couple, right? Her name is Rosa, and I think she'll be 4 or 5 this year.
Enthusiastic bakers will give a name to their sourdough starter, and they sort of describe it as if it's a pet or something like that. I think that's really nice that you have to feed it. You have to take it on a walk, sort of you keep it in the fridge, make sure that it's well cared for.
So yeah, this is something I did in the past where sourdough was like ruling my kitchen and my life. But after my husband passed away, I was given more time for myself and I started the sourdough simplified method, not just for sourdough, but also for fermentation, because I also give workshops on fermentation like kombucha, water, milk, kefir, veggies, etc.
This is really cool. So you've expanded your fermenting horizons to cover other things. And you are hugely impressive. You have a big following. You've had very successful cookbooks. I have 2 of them at home. And you also give workshops in different countries. Where are some of the countries that you've given workshops in? And what are the sort of workshops that you usually give abroad?
Yeah, sourdough has taken me across the globe. So I went to Singapore, Jamaica, UK, Thailand, of course, Croatia, Austria, Germany, Belgium, France. I think there's a large number of countries where I've been to, and yeah, sourdough is a big part of my life. But I don't only need the dough, Now I also need bodies.
Okay, that sounds very exciting. Well, so we'll save that for another conversation because since our topic today is cooking Slovenian food, how much of a sourdough tradition was there in Slovenia, and is there recently? Because if I understood correctly, historically there was much more of a tradition than there was in the last few decades, and you are helping to bring that back.
Exactly, especially where I live. I live in Koroška, Carinthia region, and we have the very famous Carinthian rye bread, which has been traditionally made with sourdough, because rye needs acidification through sourdough and to preserve the structure. But recently, in the last years, decades, the farmer ladies have been adding also commercial yeast to the dough to speed up the process. But I think now we are also like slowly coming back to just flour, water, and salt.
So in historical periods, the sourdough starter, would that have been a wild yeast that they would have used to begin it? Or if we're dating back like 2 centuries ago, what would the start of the starter have been?
Usually the starters were passed on through the generation. Here in Carinthia, what I remember is when you were like pressing apples or pears, or a bit of fermented beverages were used and mixed with flour. That would speed up the process of fermentation. And once you had the sourdough starter, basically they would reserve a portion of the dough, dry it, and use it for the next batch.
Okay. What are some of the bread traditions that a foreigner coming to Slovenia who wants to try something that's specifically Slovene should look for, as opposed to something that's more generically good bread that you could find in other countries?
Oh, well, definitely if we go into the sweet territory, I would definitely recommend potica, and sourdough potica is totally next level. Especially, for example, with tarragon, which is kind of like very country specific, I would say, for sweet dishes. Then definitely the rye bread that I mentioned here in Carinthia. Or some sorts of pogacha or focaccias. These would be like probably my top 3 pigs. However, I use sourdough in everything.
The kranjska pogača, what is that exactly? Because I've heard of it and I've tasted it, but I wasn't sure what was distinct about it. But that's often shown as sort of the showpiece Slovenian bread-like thing because it's very photogenic as well.
Yeah, but now it's made with, of course, with commercial yeast. But basically, I think they use water. They could also add a little bit of milk. Sometimes they add perhaps some eggs inside of the dough. But eggs are mainly used to egg wash on the surface, and then they would make those distinctive patterns, probably with a bench knife or something. And sometimes they also use coarse salt. Don't take my word for granted, because I'm not specialist in kranjska pogača. I just made it once or twice with sourdough.
Okay. What about for foreign visitors who want to do a cooking workshop? You do baking primarily, but what are the things that a foreign tourist who's interested in learning about the culinary traditions of Slovenia and wants to actually get stuck in and do some workshops, what are the things that they might learn to make? And what things might you suggest that they taste when they're here that are specifically Slovenian?
So I do give also private workshops on baking sourdough with gluten-free, and also on fermentation, as I mentioned. And I'm a big fan of cooking. I love homemade meals. So what would be here in Koroška in Carinthia, we have very typical dishes. They're called mežurli. It's from,
I haven't heard of this. I feel like I've researched this so much, so I'm excited when there's something that I haven't heard of. So tell me what that is.
Okay. So basically, it's the inner part of an animal, of mostly pigs. I think it's the lungs, and they are minced. And then you can add some bread to it, of course, onions, sauteed onions, herbs, seasoning, etc. And eggs, of course, just so they stick together. You can bake in a pan, or you can make a little balls with that. This is very traditional of Carinthia here. Then we also have kvočevi nudelni, which is pasta dough filled with dried pears filling. And you can put some cracklings on top. So it's like a sweet and savory dish. And then also another thing is a special potato soup with some local herbs. Povojček. I'm not sure what's his name in English. So yeah.
Are these the sort of dishes that people make at home but are a bit tricky to find at country inns? Or could you find inns that serve them still if you know where to look?
Yeah, I think you could still find them here. These are typical for Carinthia.
I like that. So one thing is to get to know national dishes like potica. But I think it's even more exciting to look for hyper-local dishes that are specific to a region or even to a town where maybe Slovenes from other parts of the country haven't encountered them yet. So I have this sort of pseudo-grandmother named Bojana who lives in Zasip, the village near Bled, which is the world's capital for cooking with dried snow pears, tepke. And it's so specific that it sounds ridiculous, but to me, that's fun. So you go on an adventure, like a pilgrimage to this random village, and you find this one cute little old lady who is the go-to person for fill-in-the-blank specialty food. And you can work with her and you can taste the things that she makes. And a lot of Slovenes have either never heard of it or they've heard of it but never tried it. And to me, that's a fun way to crisscross the country exploring culinary specialties. So I clearly need to come to Koroška and try all these dishes that I haven't heard of. If someone wants to get in touch with you about doing a cooking workshop, how do they find you?
They can find me on Instagram. So it's sourdough_mania. Or they can check my website. It's sourdoughmania.com. Or send me an email, info@sourdoughmania.com.
And that's also the name of one of your cookbooks, is that right?
That is right. Sourdough Mania is my cookbook in English.
And will there be a fermenting mania now that you've expanded from sourdough to other fermented goods?
It was but a question of time, because actually I have to share something. Sourdough was not the first ferment in my kitchen.
Uh-huh.
I have a 15-year-long affair with another ferment. Can you guess?
Oh my goodness, that sounds steamy. Is it kimchi? That might be my first guess.
No,
Okay.
it's milk kefir.
Aha, okay. Now, is there traditions in Slovenia of fermenting other things? Is kefir a Slovene tradition as well, or is that brought in from abroad?
Definitely fermenting veggies has been a long tradition, like sauerkraut, of course, or turnips, because fermentation is not just typical of one region in the world, because fermentation is a way to preserve and enhance the food.
Mm-hmm. Sauerkraut is great. Sour turnip I had never encountered before Slovenia, and the name doesn't sound quite as exciting as it is to taste. It tastes better than it sounds. The other thing that I guess it's not fermented because it's not preserved long enough, but that tastes much better than it sounds is sour milk, which you can get, for example, on Velika Planina, which is great. But if you asked a random stranger, do you want to drink some sour milk? They would probably look at you like you're crazy. But maybe can you tell us what sour milk is and where people might try it if they come?
So sour milk is definitely a product of fermentation. Natural fermentation, you need like very good milk. It should not be thermically processed, heat processed. So like raw milk. From raw milk, you can then just put it in small cups. Now, as the summer is coming, the nature will do its job very fast, probably in a day. And there like a skin starts forming on top. The milk will like not coagulate, but it will firm up. And then you just eat that. And also, some people like to use in Slovenia sourdough, like kislo testo, or kiso kruh, sour bread. So I really don't like that name because I prefer using droždí or levain because that name does not imply that something is sour, because sourdough products don't need to be sour if you know how to handle the fermentation.
That's right. Okay. This is a great introduction, and the sour milk is more like a tangy yogurt situation than anything else, so it's really worth trying. Anita, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, and thank you for championing these traditional recipes that people might have forgotten about. And you've certainly brought it to the world because your work is hugely popular, and rightly so. So thank you so much for your time. And next time in Koroška, we got to hit up one of these restaurants to have some sheep's lung.
Yeah, pig's lung or mežarli. They're usually made with a pig lung. Actually, it's very tasty.
Whatever you got, I'll eat it. It's no problem. Okay, Anita, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Ljubljana Podcast. The Ljubljana Podcast is brought to you by Odprta Kuhinja, the food festival that rocks Ljubljana's central market every Friday, all day and night from June through October. It's also brought to you by Hotel Mrak, my favorite hotel in Ljubljana, a boutique, artsy, family-run spot in the heart of the city, with a world-class breakfast and featuring my guided video tours of Ljubljana available to all guests. This podcast is produced by Urška Čarni and hosted by Noah Čarni. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.